My name is Michelle Shaw. I am the Director for Student Accessibility Services, and today's presentation is how to create an accessible PowerPoint. And this is one of those things that, we don't always think about the accessibility piece on the PowerPoint, but there is some things that we need to be mindful of as we begin creating lessons to present to our students, like say for the fall semester as we're moving forward. So on my agenda for today, I'm going to talk about the layouts and the templates that you find within PowerPoint, doing alternative text, also looking at audio transcripts, the reading order of a slide, utilizing Slide Master, animations, and then I've put some resources on the very last slide for you. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the layouts. So if you guys are familiar, if you go into your PowerPoint, you can look at the different beautiful layouts that they have for creating your own lesson in a PowerPoint. The one thing that we want to be mindful of is a majority of these are accessible, but there's going to be some when we start changing the color of a slide, that's something that you have to be mindful of because color contrast is a big issue for our students that have low vision, but also for some of our students that maybe have visual tracking issues, reading disabilities. When it's difficult to read the contrast of the writing on the background, that makes that information difficult to be able to attain for them. So that is the one thing, is looking at the slide design, making sure if you are changing, making sure that there's a sharp contrast there. The other thing is looking at what template you're using in the PowerPoint. So the PowerPoints always have a variety of different slide layouts, and depending on what it is that you're doing is going to depend upon which template that you use. I usually just use the title for the beginning, and then I go into the title and content. And I usually pretty much I try to stick to that unless I'm trying to do a comparison, and then I may go to the to content one, which is on here. You can kind of see. All of this is found if you go into your PowerPoint, you can go into the design layout. Everything is right here. These are some of the different PowerPoint slides that you get, and there's a lot more online as well. And then if you want to look at, for those who are not familiar, the layout, the drop box is right here for picking those ones. But again, you just got to be mindful what it is that you're presenting on that slide, because there are some issues that can come along. So I'm going to give you an example of poor contrast. So this is a lovely pink on a white background. This is very difficult for somebody that has low vision, vision tracking issues, and also for students that have a reading disability. And so we try to stay away from light colors on a light background or dark colors on a dark background. We want to have as much definition contrast between the two things. So, this would be something that you would need to change, not pink. I just try to stick with what's easy, and I go with either a dark blue or I go with a black, because I know that's going to be the better resolution for them to be able to read the information. And it's as simple as highlighting and changing your color. That's just much easier to be able to see. So we have some visual disorders that prefer a dark background, maybe with a yellow writing or a white writing. But if the students have access to the PowerPoint, they can actually go in and switch it, because that's not a huge percentage of individuals that have that particular need. And so for them, if they have access to the PowerPoint, not a PDF, they can go in and they can change it themselves. They're not changing the content, they're just going to change it to reflect on what they're doing. Sometimes they can even do it on the computer using some assistive technology, like our read and write program, and also the CCTV that we have, which is a closed circuit TV, which actually blows and amplifies a document and can also switch the color contrast on it as well. So the other thing to look at is choosing the appropriate slide layout for content. So this slide is not on is a title is not actually on the slide. And so I'll show you what that means. So if I go into view, I I can go into what we call outline. And on the outline, it tells you here, this is where our students with low vision or reading disabilities may utilize rather than the actual slide. And so if we look at this slide, we're on slide 4, this is not showing up because it is a text box that got added. And so we always try to tell people when you are creating a PowerPoint slide, if you want to make sure that it's actually going on the slide, is to put it in the outline view and type directly here. So I'm going to put in here using slide layouts. Now it's showing up and I can get rid of this text box. And then I can change this to whatever size that I'm doing the rest of them. I like to make them bold and I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger. So if you don't do that over here, it's not going to show up on here if it's just you're adding a text box. So that's something just to keep in mind. If you type from over here in the outline view, it will show up on your PowerPoint slide. So you're not missing information, because one thing you put in a text box on the slide that's not reflected on here, and this is how that the students are accessing the information, they're not getting it. And so that could be a key component for them that could affect their grade because they missed that information. So that's what we would say. Using the outline view is just much better than typing in the slide. And I don't know about you guys, but I know when I took classes way back when, they didn't tell us to do that. So this part is really important. The next thing is the alternative text. And so this is just something simple that we sometimes forget to do. And, sometimes we have an image and it's just decorative. Like my little owl here, he's not relevant to the information. He's just pretty. So he's decorative. But the student still needs to know what it is, because when a screen reader is reading this page, what it's doing is going image. If we don't put anything in there, it's just going to keep saying image. And so we want to make sure that we put something in here. So this right here is just a little screenshot of our alt text box, which is where you put on the information. And if you don't know where this is, the easiest way to do it is to go on your image, right click, and then you can go edit alt text. The one thing that you don't need to do, so right here, if this was generated, I don't recommend using the generated description for me, because it's not accurate. It's very vague. And again, it could be detrimental to the information to be able to give that information to the student, because it's not recording it accurately. Like I've seen it where there's two people having a conversation. It may say two people talking, but maybe there's more than that going on in that image. Maybe it's two people talking in front of a class. And so that's kind of the things that you need to do. So let me do that again for you, because I think someone keeps popping up on my screen there. So I just right click, edit alt text. I'm not going to use this. If it was just decorative, I could mark that and it would be just decorative. But I don't want it to be decorative. I want to put that it's the FAU owl logo. Oops, and I missed my O in the end. And so now when a student is using that screen reader, that's the information that they're going to get for this image for them. If you just want to have it as decorative, you can check off the decorative, but I like to let them know it's my owl, because I'm proud of my owl. So whenever you're doing it, just make sure that you are going into the right click and doing it. We do have an accessibility tool built into PowerPoint, just like it is in Word. And you can go into, I believe it's review. Yep. If you click on the review tab and you click right here, you'll see check accessibility. You could click on that and you can click on check accessibility, and it's going to give you errors and it's going to tell you how to fix them. And there's a lot of errors on here because I purposely put errors in here to show you guys how to fix things. And so all you have to do, like this one, it's a bent arrow right here. There is no alternative text for it. So I need to go in, hit edit alt text, and put in that it is a bent arrow. You can put in the color, but unless the color is really relevant, it's not a big deal. So you don't have to worry about it. If it is a big deal, if you've got a bunch of different colored arrows and you need to identify, you can put this is a red arrow, this is a blue arrow, because if you're giving them instructions like, please follow the information shown with the blue arrow, you want to make sure they're clicking on the blue arrow. So you can put in the details. So like this one right now is pointing at a logo of our wonderful owl. So you could put on here a bent arrow pointing left to FAU owl logo. You can give more details. So it all depends on what it is and what it's for. If it was just decorative, I would check off just decorative, but this is actually pointing to our lovely logo. So we put that in there for you. The other thing on here too to be mindful of, this one right here is, again, we've placed text in a box. It's not showing up. Let me go back to my view. It's not showing up in here. And so, actually it's this one right here. It's not showing up here as information because it's a text box that was placed on the slide. So this information is not reflected in the slide, so the student's not going to know what it is. It's going to show up as image. And so this, you would need to put the information here or take the information, whoops, let me do a copy, go into my text here, and I'm going to add, whoops, I'm going to add it in here. So now, and I have to make sure, and you see how this one right now is all joined together? This is because I'm not using the right slide. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to undo, and I'm going to go back to the layout of the slide. So I want to make sure that I'm using the right kind of slide for this. And right now, I think it got deleted, that's why. Let me do call, cut. I am going to go back in there. Sometimes if you change, go back. It's because I actually did delete it. Let me go into this one. And I'm going to hit paste. So now this is showing up in here. So it all depends what is in here. So right now, the problem was I deleted the text box, the original text box that was there, part of the title slide. So I had to go in and re-put that in there so that it would work. So those are some of the little things that can happen where it's accidental and you don't realize it, but it causes a whole bunch of grief for our students. This one right here also is not showing up because it's placed in a text box with the arrow. And so you want to think about how are you going to make that work? We could just put that as a alt text and put that a nice logo in there for this. The other issue on this page is the writing. So I've used a couple of different kinds of fonts. We have a tendency to get really, really, really excited about fonts and we want to make it fancy. The only problem is these are what we call non-sans serif fonts, which means they got the curly cues. And some of our students with low vision and especially vision tracking, even some of our students that have um, dyslexia, have trouble with letters as it is, especially like your A's and B's and P's and Q's and some numbers. But when you start adding the curly cues in on the letters, that makes them look really pretty. That is a problem for them. They have a really difficult time figuring out the letters. And it may sound kind of crazy. Well, how can that be? And it's just how their brain processes that information. It's just making it more difficult. Whereas if we changed it and made it into, I always try to stick with a really good sans serif font like Arial. This is much easier for them to read than this. It's clear, it's concise. They're even out there's a special font that was designed specifically for students that have ADHD because of the difficulty with the letters and the numbers. Because even with ADHD, that could be a problem too. And so, and being able to stay focused on that information, having the nice, clear, concise letters is better for them. So I usually tend to stick with Arial, Tahoma, Calibrary. Those are the ones that my go-tos when I do stuff. Like I hate Times Roman numeral, which is like everybody seems to want to use that. I find that annoying sometimes. I like to stick, like I said, Arial or Calibrary are my two big ones. So that's just something else to keep in mind when you are preparing slides. All right. And again, see the logo? It's not got any information here either. So that's another problem. So you would have to put in the alt format text in here for this. So I'm going to put in there FAU our logo. So we know it's there. We already put in the arrow. And then this little guy, we put it in over here. That's going to cause a problem later on with the reading order, but I'll show you that piece in a minute on there. And I did put in there, when you do get copies of these PowerPoints, I've put notes for you. So you don't have to kind of be writing everything down verbatim. I'd rather you see what's happening. I put a lot of notes in the note section on the PowerPoint for you guys to refer to. So I talk about types of fonts. I talk about, which ones are the best to work with. I also talk about size, because size does matter for fonts as well. I mean, don't expect that you have to do, 30 font all the time for everything. You don't have to do that. The minimum requirement that they say is a 12 font. So don't try not to go below a 12 font. Our students, as long as they have access to the PowerPoint that you have, they can go in and change the font size themselves that's going to please with them, or they're going to use the assistive technology for them to be able to read it with the screen reader. So just to keep that part in mind too. So another thing that you can do, and I know these days we're trying to be proactive on everything, and sometimes we do like to record our PowerPoints, or we want to create like a transcript for our PowerPoints too. That can happen. The feature that they have in already built into PowerPoint is if you can go in and you can do the record, so you can record the screen or you can record the audio. What we recommend is that you put the narration into the PowerPoint so that you already have your transcript, what you want to say, and then you can record it. And so anybody that's deaf, they don't have to worry about that audio because you've already created the written piece for it. And that just makes life easier. But it's also good if you're going to be creating it into a video. Now you already have your script, and it's just much easier for us to create captioning when you already have a script. It's really super quick. So that's something just to keep in mind as you're doing videos of PowerPoints, if that's what you want to do, or you're doing an audio caption for the PowerPoint as well. We use it quite a bit too in YouTube. YouTube is probably one of our go-tos, but there's a lot of other good tools out there that you can use to create a transcript as well. So I'm going to give you a little example of what I mean by this. If no one's ever used that tool, it's pretty easy because all you have to do is click on it and talk. That's it. And then you hit stop when you're done. So audio narration, I'm going to play right here. Oops, I forgot.
Audio narrated slides are excellent, but can pose barriers to those who are in sound-sensitive settings or have hearing impairments. There are two great options. 1. Add the text of the audio recording into the slide notes section for each slide. Students can print the PowerPoint using the Notes Pages option. Also, slide notes will be exported to PDF. 2. Make the PowerPoint a video file and upload to a hosting site with automatic captioning. Then the captions can be corrected.
So you see how cool and easy that is? Also, if you see here, there's a little microphone. I didn't do the alternative text there. So you would have to put in here that this is an audio file, just so that it would be able to recognize this image right here. So just wanted to put that in there. But all this information, I placed it into the slide, but it's also in the notes as well. I contemplated not putting it there, and then I said, nah, I'm just going to put it there for you guys. But if you've never used that feature, I find it to be really good, especially when you're teaching online, to do that, because you can pre-record. And so not only do the students have the PowerPoint, but they also can listen as well, because we know our students learn differently. And especially when you're working with students when English isn't their first language, this is really, really good for them. So now they have the audio and the written component too to help make sense of that information. Okay. reading order. So this one's a fun one. So for reading order, we want to make sure when we're doing stuff, we want to make sure that we're putting it in a perfect order. And the way to do that is like I've shown you before, by being in the outline session. You can put your stuff in reading order because you're putting it directly here. But sometimes that doesn't happen. We're not perfect, and I don't expect anybody to be perfect. I know I'm not. I mess up sometimes too. But you just want to make sure that you're checking for the reading order. So, especially if you're putting in any text boxes or images, that can throw off the reading order on a slide. So, with a screen reader, if I threw in an image of my owl logo here, it might go from reading line one to the owl, and then it might go down to the second line and then the third line, but it kind of messes things up. Like the students may get confused depending on what the information is. And so that's one of the things you want to be mindful of. And I'm going to show you a quick trick on how to double check on that. So I'm going to go to this next slide. So this is where we can examine the reading view. So if you can, we go into on the slide, there's accessibility is open because I put the accessibility checker on. So if you remember how I did that, I went into view, I clicked on check accessibility. It always brings up this little red accessibility right here. So if you click on it, it brings up this pane and you could go to reading order pane. And all you gotta do is click on it and it's gonna tell you how it's reading this slide. And so if there's any information here, if you see, okay, it's reading the title and then it's going to, that's a nice logo, it's skipping this. Then it's going to inserting items. So it's going from here to here, actually to here, then to here, then it's going to the arrow, then it's going to the image, and then it's going to, I believe, this one, and then this one. So the reading order is all out of sync. So you want to make sure that it's concise. So you could just move things around. So if I wanted to do this first and then this, I can change those around. So right now it's going to here. So I want to bring him down so I can move him. So I'm going from here to here. Now I think I want it to read my owl. So I'm going to move my picture up to here. I've got my arrow next. And then I have, that's a nice logo. And then I have picture number 9, but I think I want number 10 first because I want to show you where it is. And then number 9. And the reason it's saying picture number 9 because I haven't done the alternative text here. So you just want to remind you how to do it, edit the text, and put in the information. So I'm just going to put on here, this is the reading order box for checking. And I'm putting a little bit more information. Whoa, and I can't spell. It's supposed to say sure. Um, that things are reading correctly. So for somebody that was with low vision and I'm giving them an assignment on this, I want to make sure that they understand what this is as I read it, because it is a reading order. That's what it's called. But what is the purpose of it? And so I'm putting the purpose right in here. And then it would be the same for here. I want to make sure that they understand that we're in the tab that says accessibility, and then we're clicking on the reading order pane to check the reading order. So I would put that in here as well. I hope that makes sense. But it's, you saw how easy it was for me to move things around to make sure that everything was in reading order. And so now I'm not getting an error message, by the way. The reading order has been fixed. I mean, I could double check because he knows I've done it. I've got them all in the order that I want. Bent arrow, text box, the reading pane under the accessibility, and then the reading order box. So I hope that makes sense. All right, so then
It does. And it's one of those things that I have seen a couple of times, but was not as comfortable about navigating it and making it work that way. We also had two questions. One has to do with the creating YouTube recording post, and the other one is being able to create to do cut and paste when you have a logo or an image that you are using multiple times. Can you cut and paste it with its alt text, and will that show up?
I will show you. You could do that actually in the slide master, and then it
Okay.
will show up on it. If you want it on every slide, this is kind of like if you see those ones that design
Yeah.
through the FAU marketing, although they don't always add the alternative text in there. Just saying, those is all done through the slide master. So it doesn't necessarily copy over, so you'd have to do it again. But when you use the slide master, it should. Um,
Okay.
so,
Great.
and then the other one was about the videos.
Yeah, it said, and I don't know if Wanda wanted to be unmuted to ask, but her question was, can you address how to make a YouTube recording post in YouTube? That might be a little bit more than in today's session, but we might be able to
Well, as I
revisit.
say, we could always do another session. I'm offering up my services. I can also do how to do
Thank you. Thank
what do you
you.
call it, to
Thank you.
create one. Because normally, if I'm going to create a video myself based on my PowerPoint, many times I use Zoom because I like Zoom. I'm more comfortable with Zoom. But I've
Yeah.
used PowerPoint to create a video as well. And then all you'd have to do is take that video, which comes as an MP4 file, and you have to go into what we call the YouTube Studio, and you could create an account. I have two because sometimes I have more than one video going at once. And so you just upload your video, it runs through. I always keep my videos private, I'd never make them public because most of the time I'm doing them for a faculty member anyway, but they're not meant to be on YouTube live. I just keep them so that I can create an MP4 video and create the captions that go with it that I can then edit right in YouTube, and then I can download my what they call SRT file, which is the file that we need to do the captions, and you can upload both of those into MediaSite. So
Okay. And so, Michelle, we're going to invite you to
do a session on that one.
do a session on that, perhaps that, and if, anything else that comes up. Thank you so much,
No
and thank you,
problem.
Wanda, for asking that.
Yeah, and I can tell you this: we do. I don't use MediaSite personally. I'm not a fan, but don't tell OIT that. I just haven't been a fan. To me, it's been a little bit of a headache. So what I do, and because we have our dashboard, I do it through our DocSoft appliance, and I just add the captions through that. But there's free online services that you can also do it as well. And I know Adobe Premiere Pro right now has a really good program for doing captioning, which we just purchased through the tech fee. Haven't had a lot of time to play with it yet, but I can't wait to play and see how good it is. But I was like, we already have Adobe Pro. I want to have the upgrade so I can have the captioning piece on there as well. So that's just something else to think about. But I can do a whole thing on captioning for you guys. So the other one, if you want to be consistent using the same message over and over again on every single slide, the slide master is going to be the best friend for you. And you can go into the slide master. If you go in here, I'm going to show you, go into view, and then you're going to click on slide master. And so in here, I can put in my FAU logo. I could put maybe my office name in here if I wanted to. Anything that you want that's going to be on every slide, you can put it in the master slide, and then it's going to transfer onto all of the slides that you use for your presentation. So this is how marketing does it. The one thing is, if you are going to put an image, and I need to get an image, let me see if I can. I'm going to close real quick so I can get my little owl. Let me get Mr. Owl real quick. I'm going to copy him, and then I'm going to go back into the slide master, and I want to put him in here. And I've got to make sure, let me get rid of my reading order. I'm going to put in my FAU owl logo. All right, so I have him in there. I've got my alternative sex. I want to make sure that he is on my slide. And I've got that on the master slide there. And then I want to put him maybe on my title slide as well. So let me put him in here. And are you going to do? It stayed for this one, so that's good. All right, so now I'm going to close. And now he's showing up on my slides. Not probably in the best place I want it to be, but he's showing up on my slides. So you see how easy that can be. So that's the slide master. So the one another thing that you want to keep in mind with the slide master is also, when you're doing it, making sure that you're using the same accessible fonts and colors, the contrast into the background on this. Just because, again, if you have some of the slides that we have, like some of the slide designs, they're not so bad. But I know we have this one. That's how this one comes out. That's a horrible, horrible design color contrast. This is too light. So we don't like to use that one. So when you're using the slide master, also just think about those colors. The other one that I have, which is the last one, is animations. So sometimes we like to keep our students engaged and we want to make it nice and fun and happy. But sometimes those animations, when you put them in, are very distracting. And also, they don't work with assistive technology, and so that becomes a problem because the students don't know what's going on. It's very confusing. So we tell, just limit any animations that you do to prevent that. And a big one to think of is, for me, is try to stay away from text and images. So sometimes we might want to put an image of the word, like, I don't know, wow. And it's just an image of the word wow. That's not readable. And especially if it's blinking and flashing, that really doesn't work really well for some students. It can make them very nauseous, disorientated. And so those are the things we kind of try to stay away from. Um, you know, these are what we call vestibular disorders. Uh, it's also some of our students that have seizure disorders. It can also affect them as well. But our low vision students, they don't understand it either. And depending on what eye disorder they have, could also be very, straining on their eyes. And so we try to stay away from those kinds of things when we're designing a presentation for them in mind. To me, it's clear and concise. Like, I've got a presentation coming up in a few weeks at our national conference, and we have accessible templates that our organization designed. But I know some people are going to throw in some stuff in there because they want it to be pretty. I just keep mine plain and simple. It's a title and then a couple of bullets, and then I put a lot of information down below that I don't tell them about until the end of the presentation because I want them to pay attention. Um, but those are the kind of things when you are creating your powerpoints, just to keep those things in mind. And to me, the note section here are just the best to put information, because it's also good for you to remember what it is you want to talk about, because sometimes you get sidetracked, and sometimes you get, as you get older, you forget stuff. And I know I forget more stuff than I used to these days. And so that piece is important as well. So, and the last slide that I have as we're coming up to the end of the session is just some resources. And there's a lot of resources on this slide. You're not going to have that logo in the middle of it. But I just kind of wanted to share them with you. So Microsoft has a really good video on how to make a accessible PowerPoint. It's very good. There's also this one. It's on a website. It's designed to help people with disabilities or working with people with disabilities. And that also has a how to create an accessible PowerPoint. And then below, I've got some other things about looking at color contrast. So there's a free color contrast checker. There's actually two of them. There's also one that's called the image description guideline that talks about, how to describe an image to the crowd when you're presenting at a conference or, in front of a class. You can do a quick description about what that image is live. Um, there's also one that talks about how to do accessible images, so working on the alternative text. And then the other one that we have is on WebAIM, which will check the accessibility of your web pages. This one's a really big one because the university is so big and every department has their own website, and you know, sometimes the faculties have their own website. And so this gives you tips, and it will actually give an accessibility check for you and tell you what is wrong with your website and what needs to be fixed. And that's really good. And then the last one that I have on there is the web content accessibility guidelines, which is what we abide by when it comes to accessibility online for individuals. So this is worldwide. So it's a lot of good information there. So that's everything I got. I know that was a lot in the time that we had.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Michelle. As always, very, very informative. And I'm so glad that you've included things in the notes because I was trying to really absorb rather than writing stuff down. So bless you for that. And we look forward tremendously to your next sets, the other things that you'll be sharing with us, and obviously there's a few more that we'll be looking forward to. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Judy. And thank you everyone for attending. I appreciate it.